Okay.
I am superior.
Yeah, right? So I think the one part of homework I asked you to read for yesterday, for your class, was meaningless words, correct?
Yes.
So talk to me about the meaningless words. What does he say about them?
Can I say?
Yeah.
Okay, it says, as use of our criticism, it's strictly meaningless in the sense that it does not only, that they not only do no point to any desirable objects, but is hardly ever expected to do so by the readers.
Okay, where are you?
After it says words like romantic, plastic,
Fifth line down.
Okay. So he's using, and he does give you some examples, right? He says particularly in like art criticism, we have words that they're meaningless because they don't point to anything, any discoverable object. What's that term that we could use for that? Any discoverable object? We defined it. It's the opposite of abstract. In other words, it is abstract. It's not concrete. Yeah. The words you can't say like, this is the color blue, this is the color pink. It just says, this expresses animosity. This expresses anger. Okay, how do we know that? That's a bunch of colors on a page, right? So if there's nothing specific to point to, it becomes meaningless, according to Orwell. And we don't even expect it to. Okay, what else? Why did I use that? How does he expand on that idea? Talks about some are lacking in meaning. What else?
Doesn't it talk about like the words that politicians use or that are involved in politics have like each party creates their own meaning?
Ah.
I said political words are similarly abused.
In that each group has its own meaning. And our nations too, right? He talks about nations as well. Defenders of every kind of regime claim that it is a democracy and fear that they might have to stop using that word if it was tied down to any one meaning. So we're using this ambiguous meaning in which everybody has kind of their own internal idea of what that word means. But they're not, there's something in here that it should indicate to you, let's see, that they intend to hide something with it, right? That it's conscious, it's not conscientious, it's a conscious choice to hide their meaning behind the word. Do I need to zoom in for you? That part that she was referencing, where was it? I just saw it. No agreed definition, and the attempt to make one is resisted from all sides. He gives you an example then too, right? This word fascism. And says how it just merely means something not desirable. And we've got several others that have similar meanings. Democracy. It's universally felt that when we call a country democratic, we're praising it. It's great. It's a democratic country. But We have people who are also using it with their own internal definition. It'd be like if I'm trying to give you burnt crackers and I tell you that they're crispy, right? My idea of crispy is not something you want to put in your mouth because it's too crunchy and gonna break your teeth. And you think crispy is like lightly toasted, and I know that, and I'm still gonna use that word anyway, even though I know what I mean and I know what you think, but I'm just gonna let you accept it according to your definition. Does that make sense? Okay, yeah, which suggests what about this? It's manipulative. So part of this, when he's talking about politics in the English language, is that he's calling out their manipulation of language in order to keep people in the dark. Yeah, he says words of this kind are often used in a consciously dishonest way. They know that they're using it dishonestly. So the person who uses it, this is that bit I was talking about, that private definition, but allows the hearer to think that he means something quite different. Yeah, we'll go with your definition. Sure. Totally cool. Really an example about crispy, but oh well. And then he gives you some more examples. That this guy was a true patriot, but he already said, like, we're not really giving meanings to these words anymore. Nobody wants to nail down what a patriot means. The Soviet press. Do you guys know much about the Soviet Union? Okay, Soviet press is the freest in the world. We don't want you to define these words. We don't want to have an agreed definition because then we can't say that. But that sounds so good, right? It sounds good to us. Catholic Church is opposed to persecution. Well, it depends on what you mean by persecution. At least in their time period. So, like he says, almost always made with the intent to deceive. Others have multiple meanings, still used in a dishonest, more or less dishonestly, and he gives you some other examples. All right, so that brings us up to page 5. All right. Page 5, let's see. Andy, can you read the next paragraph for me?
Where it says, now that I have.
Yep.
Now that I have made this catalog of symbols and perversions, let me give another example of the kind of error that they led to. This time it must of its nature be an imaginary one. I am going to translate a passage of good English into modern English of the word soul. Here is a well-known verse from
Oh,
Yes.
Ecclesiastes?
I return and ponder the sun, that the race is not to the swift, nor the battle to the strong, neither yet breath to the wise, nor yet riches to men of wisdom, nor yet favor to men of skill, but time and chance happen to them all. Here it is, modern English. Objective considerations of contemporary phenomena compel the conclusion that success or failure in competitive activities exhibits no tendency to be
Commensurate? Commensurate?
commensurate with any criteria, but that a trivial element of the unpredictable must invariably be taken into account.
Okay, nice job. So, he's using a passage. So think of this structurally. He's told you, here's all the different problems. Here's all the ways in which we've people have, and look at these strong words, swindles and perversions. Do you know what a swindler is? Somebody who cheats you out of something, right? It's usually used in reference to money, right? Like they're swindling you out of money or something of that sort, okay? So it's a cheat or a thief. We talked about perversions. Okay. So now he's made these catalogs. So structurally here, now that I've outlined all the ways language is manipulated and misused, let's look at other outcomes. Why does he need to do this? He's talking about politics and the English language. He tells you that the language is in poor shape. He tells you that it is at the fault of politics and economics. Right? But first he has to prove how language is bad. So he gives you examples. Okay, I'm talking you through this because that page, this part, sorry, I don't want to cover it for you here, but this part, the effectiveness of the structure, this is a tough bit. Okay, so that's why I keep kind of zooming out and looking at his overarching argument. So first he tells you it's in a bad way, yes, we can all agree. And then he tells you it's politics and economics that have caused that. Okay? He has to back up and prove to you how bad language is. So he gives you those 5 specimens of things that are really difficult to understand, right? And he says they're actually below average. Most of it's worse than that. And he gives you the broad idea of its lack of lack of precision and stale images, right? Which we're kind of like, okay, cool, but if you told me to fix that, I wouldn't know what to do. So then he breaks it down further and he says, the reason for that is meaningless words, dying metaphors, pretentious diction, and he names several specific things, right? Now he says, okay, now that we've got that, now these ways that these language has been cheated and manipulated, let's look at one of these other effects. So he takes a passage from the Bible. Why the Bible? Because people in Britain were pretty universally religious. It would have been one of the texts that everybody's familiar with. It needs to be familiar. It needs to be familiar for people to understand what is being done. He takes something that's familiar and simple, and then he translates it to modern English, employing all of the problems. This is the same passage. Do you see the difference? Can you hear the difference when he read them? The objective considerations of contemporary phenomena compel the conclusion that success or failure in competitive activities exhibits no tendency to be commensurate with innate capacity, but that a considerable element of the unpredictable must invariably be taken into account.
It sounds like English, but like I don't understand a word you're saying.
It's because you have to break down each thing mentally. All of it, actually, he's going to tell you. I'll stop telling you what it is. So, he says that it's a parody. Do you know what a parody is?
Yeah.
Okay. And he calls it a very gross one. So it's not, it's still bad even in what it's doing. It's just terrible. Exhibit 3. Exhibit 3. So this one back here on psychology, that's what he's referencing. He says, this contains several patches of the same kind of English. It will be seen that I have not made a full translation. So he didn't even finish this passage. He's already at 4.5 lines, and it's incomplete. It's an incomplete translation. That should indicate to you how wordy and complicated, overcomplicated it is. The beginning and ending of the sentence follow the original meaning fairly closely. So if you were to try to compare this to this, they mean the same thing. I returned and saw under the sun objective considerations of contemporary phenomena, so under the sun, compel the conclusion. So I saw, and then this is the conclusion that he makes. Compel the conclusion that success or failure, the race, is not to the swift. Success or failure in competitive activities, that's still race. Are you seeing a little bit of how they, okay, just as long as you can catch some of it. Okay, so fairly close to the original. In the middle, the concrete illustrations, the race, the battle, the bread, all of these things. So this one has the race, the battle's not to the strong, we get bread to the wise. We have these concrete images that we can attach meaning to, that we can see, right? He says they dissolve into vague phrases like success or failure in competitive activities. This has to be so because no modern writer of the kind I am discussing, no one capable of using phrases like objective considerations of contemporary phenomena, would ever tabulate his thoughts in that precise and detailed of a way. So he's saying this is detailed and precise. This is vague and abstract. Now analyze these two sentences a little more closely. The first contains 49 words, but only 60 syllables. Okay, so we've got 49 words to 60 syllables. Okay, that might not mean much to you yet. Let's see, 49. So almost 50 words and 60 syllables. So we've only got a few words that are more than one syllable. Does that make sense? These are very simple words. All of its words are those of everyday life. The second contains 38 words of 90 syllables. Look at how our ratio's changed. 49 to 60, at least they're close together. Now we've got 38 and 90, more than twice as much. In other words, there is hardly a single monosyllabic word, mono meaning one. There's what? Of, the, or, that. Everything else is 3 syllables long. Every other word he uses. 18 of those words are from Latin roots and 1 from Greek. So now, remember where he talked about how people are using Latin, thinking that it's more sophisticated than the simple Anglo-Saxon terms that we usually use? The first sentence contains 6 vivid images. And only one phrase, time and chance happeneth to us all. That could be called vague. This is the only vague bit. Let's see. The second contains not a single fresh, arresting phrase. In spite of its 90 syllables, it only gives a shortened version of the meaning contained in the first.
Sophia in here? Did you still want to take the iPad? No.
You're so polite. No, thank you. All right. Yeah, without a doubt, it is the second kind of sentence that is gaining ground in the modern language, modern English. Okay, so he told you those things, but now he has to give you something familiar so that you can compare it yourself, right? So that you can see the difference between the simplicity that it could be and the complexity that it's become. Okay? I do not want to exaggerate. This kind of writing is not yet universal, and outcrops of simplicity will occur here and there, even in the worst written page. Still, if you or I were to write a few lines, yeah, thank you. We'll write a few lines on the uncertainty of human fortunes, we should probably come much nearer to my imaginary sentence than the one from Ecclesiastes. So, the uncertainty of human fortunes is the theme of that line from Ecclesiastes that he's talking about. As I've tried to show, modern writing at its worst does not consist of picking out words for the sake of their meaning and inventing images in order to make the meaning clearer. Sorry, my lines don't come out straight very often. Okay, so clearly, language, U-A-G-E, is for communication. Communicating thoughts and ideas clearly. Modern English is not communicating meaning. Okay. Okay, I'm going to give you one more tip when it comes to this. When we're talking about key ideas and details, you should be able to tell me what his overall idea here, this is part of the development of the central idea, just in case you weren't catching that. This is developing the central idea. The central idea that politics is degrading the English language. Politics and economics, or the causes of them, are degrading the English language. And here he's developing it by showing what language looks like now, and how it impedes understanding, how it prevents people from being able to understand clearly what it is that they're saying. So when you talk about those key ideas and details, I should see little bits of things from all over, okay? So take a look at each paragraph. What is the main focus of each paragraph? How is that contributing to the overall idea, right? So I should see stuff from dying metaphors and pretentious diction, but I should also see stuff that is talking about language breaking up or getting in the way of meaning instead of creating it. He continues, it consists of gumming together long strips of words which have already been set in order by someone else, making the results presentable by sheer humbug. Do you have any more words to add to tone and attitude there? You guys know what humbug is? No? What would you guess? Have you heard it anywhere else? Yeah, like Scrooge? Ah, humbug. Mm-hmm. If you were to replace this word with something, what would you guess he might replace that with? So all of these phrases have been put together by somebody else. So making the results of you using them sheer humbug. What?
Golf cart.
Golf cart. What? Okay, let's try again. What do you think? Ridiculous. Go ahead. Yeah. For like ridiculous. Accident. Like just chaos. There's no actual plan. It just, it's a mix of all those things. Okay? The attraction, here you go. This is another thing he addresses quite frequently is why do people do it, right? He keeps coming back. If it is so bad, why do people keep doing it? He has to make this argument because it's part of the counter argument. Why it keeps happening. It's easy. It's so easy. It's easier, even quicker, once you have the habit to say, in my opinion, it is not an unjustifiable assumption that, we probably heard that one before, right? Then to say, look at that, I think. 2 words. 2 words. But the simplicity, oh, it's just, it's so simple. Okay, so why do we use these ready-made phrases? 1, sorry, there you go. They're easy. 2, they're quicker. If you use ready-made phrases, you not only don't have to hunt about for the words, you also don't have to bother with the rhythms of your sentences, since these phrases are generally so arranged as to be more or less euphonious. What guesses do you have on euphonious? He's talking about rhythms and...
Like easier to put together.
Okay, kind of. Rhythms indicates what? Okay, so maybe tone. What else? When you talk about the rhythm of something, what are you usually referring to?
Yeah,
Like the beat, like music. Yeah, so if we're talking about music, the rhythms of your sentences. Did you know we speak in rhythm? Yeah, we do. You know, Shakespeare, you know why he writes the way he writes? He actually writes in, oh, you're not gonna love this, but I'm gonna tell you anyway. He writes in something called, anybody wanna guess? Usually, especially sonnets, those poems that he writes. In fact, he wrote so many that we have like Shakespearean sonnets. He writes in something called iambic pentameter. This has to do with the rhythm of the way that we speak. Okay? Meter is like the length. Penta, anybody know what penta means? Yeah, 5. So it's a length of 5 sections of iambs. Yeah. Like you think science, you'd think by now we've applied a scientific method to everything, but to language too. We have calculated the way that we speak and the way that the way it comes out. So an iamb is it's a set of an unstressed and a stressed. Let's see, like today. Generally, where's the emphasis of today? We say today. Today. Yeah. Right? This is the way most of our speaking ends up coming out. Da 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 da, like that, right? It has that unstressed, stressed part. Pentameter just means that there's 5 of these per line. That's it. And he uses that because that is the closest to our natural speech rhythm on a regular basis. You didn't know you had speech rhythms, huh? We recognize it. Yeah. We recognize it with some people, right? We see it in song lyrics and raps and all of those kinds of things. They're emphasizing stuff we already do. They're honing it and they're pulling it into their control to create something musically for you. Okay, so euphonious has to do with pleasing to the ear. That's why he cares about those rhythms. We're on page 6 and you need to read 7 and 8. Oof. Okay, is it getting easier? Is it getting easier to follow? Yeah. To read? Andy's like, please, don't stop. Okay. I know, I only got 1 minute. I don't even think I can get you that much farther. Let's see. When you're dictating, making a public speech, it's natural to fall into the pretentious Latinized style. These kinds of things all have to do with the sound. All right, guys, have a good day. If I get any further, maybe I'll make you a video and put it online. We'll see. Yeah, I should. I'll see. I'll see what I can do.